Okay, awesome. So hi, everybody. Welcome to today's Add-ons community meeting. It's September 11th, 2019. Looks like we have a couple of folks with us on our call today. We've got myself, Caitlin. We've got Sylvain, BJ, and Ferretz, Andreas, Shivam, and Jorge. And it looks like Christoph might be hanging out in the document, but I don't see him on the call, so no worries. So thanks everybody for joining us this week. I wanted to give a special shout out to a code contributor, Cesar Caruitero. I apologize, I've probably mangled that last name. But Cesar has landed some really great patches recently in some of our repositories that help make basic functioning work. So one of the recent patches he landed was in the sign add-on repository, so the thing that actually signs the add-ons. He updated a bunch of dependencies, which was really time-consuming, took a lot of research, it was pretty difficult to do, and as one of our staff members mentioned, is not work that people generally enjoy doing. So to see that come in from a contributor is really special. And and it also elicited a bunch of responses from the team of, oh my God, I love open source. So Cesar, thank you so much for contributing that patch. It really brought a lot of smiles to a lot of team members there. And I think it's gonna help other folks, make sure that their add-ons are signed thanks to those dependencies being updated. So thanks so much. So we have a couple of updates this week and also happy to answer some questions. Gosh, I can't believe it's already September. So I feel like I've just been seeing some questions about Firefox for Android popping up recently. So I thought I would open today by just generally talking a little bit about the current state of Firefox for Android and what that means for extensions and themes. And then also collecting a couple of questions in case we need to go back and do a little bit more research. So y'all might have heard about this, but our current release of Firefox for Android is nicknamed Fennec. So Fennec supports extensions and themes, static themes. Right now, Fennec is in its end of life. So it's getting patches made to it, but it's not under what we would consider active development. So I just learned that the new dot releases are getting pushed along with Firefox Desktop's ESR cycles. So we've got another update coming on October 22nd. Needless to say, we learned this recently because some static themes were not installing on Firefox for Android devices. That bug got fixed a couple of days ago. So that patch is set to go out with that ESR dot release update on October 22nd. And it should also be fixed if you're running a pre-release version of Firefox for Android, a pre-release version of Fennec. So it should be verified on Fennec Beta and also two of the Fennec Nightly builds for 70 and 71. Fennec is going to be retired and replaced by another thing that is being internally called Phoenix. So Phoenix is also known as Firefox Preview. So if you've seen that word out there in the world, that is associated with the Phoenix product. Phoenix is currently under development, and I do not believe it has yet been released. And I'm also not sure if there's a test version, like a pre-release version that is live and open for people to check out. What I did want to say about Phoenix is that Philip, our Web Extensions product manager, is talking with the product manager of Phoenix about extensibility in Phoenix. One of the key things that we learned from Armageddon a couple of months ago is that users really love their extensions and really rely on their extensions. So it would be really great if people had the ability to install certain extensions on their Android devices. So the things that we're probably going to be prioritizing, although this is not yet 100% set in stone, is like we want to make sure that it would be really great if ad blockers, for example, could work on Phoenix, since that is something that users really seem to love. And we see that in the numbers, and we also see that in the sentiment. When people's ad blockers break, we hear about it pretty quickly. One of the things about Phoenix, though, is it looks like there isn't going to be a lot of UI to customize. So it looks like theming capabilities are not going to be present in Phoenix. And it might be something a little bit more basic, like you can choose a color or like apply a color to a skin, but being able to apply a theme by Madonna, it doesn't look like that is going to be part of Phoenix. So that's where we are with that.
There is a nightly version of Phoenix, and I'm running it on my cell phone.
Okay, awesome. How does it look?
I actually don't use it much.
Okay.
Because I'm used to the other one. It has my bookmarks where I want it. So I've reported a few issues, but not much.
That sounds good. One of the other kind of ongoing things that we've been dealing with over the last couple of months is add-on discovery for mobile users. So right now, each developer has the opportunity or like has the ability to check a box when they're submitting an extension saying that it's compatible with Android. But there isn't really like, I don't think that there's like a sort of code check to verify that. So what that means is that you may end up, when you're searching AMO on an Android device, you may see a listing of something that says it's compatible with Android. And maybe when you install it, all of the functionality isn't there or it doesn't work very well. So one of the things that the team has been working on over the last couple of months is kind of closing that loop and making it a little bit easier to discover good Android extensions when you are on an Android device on AMO. And it looks like that's going to continue to be an ongoing project, especially with the recommended extensions program. So figuring out how to kind of surface those higher quality extensions to Android users that are appropriate for Android. So we're aware of this issue. We're working on it. It's a little complicated. It's a little weird. Hopefully we'll get there. Yeah, are there any other questions about Android, Firefox for Android and extensions? Okay, awesome. I'm gonna try to dig up a little bit more information about like when Phoenix is expected to, I mean, obviously Phoenix is out there in the wild right now, but like when it's gonna really be out there in the wild, I think we're probably still a ways off from that. But I'm trying to track down some information about dates and such.
I think we will gradually evolve into the final product. There is already a version on the Google Play Store.
Okay.
So I think eventually it will evolve into the next Firefox for Android or whatever we are going to call it.
Got it. Okay. That is really helpful information. Okay, so something else I wanted to talk a little bit about this week is one of the current A/B tests on AMO that you might have seen if you're in one of the A groups or B groups, as it might be. So part of our ongoing, I don't actually know, if you're in the A group, do you see the message? Oh, okay, anyway, that's a side note. Anyway, so y'all remember back earlier this year when we were kind of given this directive to focus on improving the security of the add-ons ecosystem in general. That kind of spawned the idea of, we should be recommending a number of extensions that we feel are good for the users, that are relevant, and that also meet our really high standards of security and privacy. And we want to make sure that users are informed and aware of the risks of installing extensions that are outside of that set of recommended extensions. So one of the things that we started testing, and the test went live, I think last week, is a warning that you see on an extensions product page that will say a message that says, this extension is currently not being monitored by Mozilla. Learn more about what that means here. So this, as we mentioned, is part of the A/B test. It's a test. We want to gauge what happens when we run that message. Does it drive down installs? Do users click to learn more about what the risks of installing extensions are. So we want to get some qualitative measurements, but we also want to get some feedback, like, is this too much? Is this too hostile? Do we need to kind of walk this back a little bit so that people, so that, you know, so that developers don't feel completely alienated by this warning. So I just wanted to mention this because this has been out in the press a little bit. So I wanted to bring it up here since folks on this call might be getting some questions from the community about what this is. So yes, it is a test. We'll be analyzing the results in a couple of weeks and then making a decision about what the next iteration of this is, or you know, if it stays, if it goes away, if it gets modified in some way. The truth of the matter is that there are thousands of extensions on AMO, and a lot of them are not actively being monitored. And this is something that happened when we moved to the post-review model, where before add-ons appearing on AMO was gated on being reviewed, and the queues were really long, and a lot of developers were really unhappy with the wait time. So when we moved to the post-review queue, one of the risks that we took on was the fact that maybe not everything was going to be reviewed. And that's the state that we're in right now. So we can guarantee that code review happens to our recommended extensions, but we can't guarantee it for every other extension out there. So some of what we're trying to do is educate users and let them know that while the vast majority of extensions and extension developers do not have ill intent, there are bad actors out there, and those bad actors can damage people's computers through malicious extensions, and they just need to be aware. We also have an article about how folks can assess the safety of an extension. So what key indicators can they look for that signal that an extension is trustworthy and safe versus maybe lack of indicators may indicate that something malicious or bad is at play. So first I want to ask if there's any questions about the A/B test. At the same time, I also want to open this up for some feedback about what your experience with this has been, what it feels like for you as a user, or you as a developer, or you as a member of the ecosystem. And we can take that feedback back to the team and share it. But I definitely wanted to get some thoughts from this group.
It seems like it's too big a warning to show every time. It might be useful to show it a couple of times and then show a reduced version they can expand.
So like the actual text of the warning is too long to show every time. So instead of showing the full thing every time, like maybe condense it to like a warning.
And then let them expand it, or
Okay.
If you're going to ignore it, might as well give something small to ignore rather than ignore every large warning.
Okay. Sylvain, Shivam, you're both add-on developers. It's totally fine if you don't want to share any thoughts right now. The
warning for me is fine. I only have one question. The warning shows only depending if the extension is in the recommended list or not. It has nothing to do with if the extension is reviewed manually. That's
correct.
It? Okay.
Yeah, correct. Okay. And I think that this is the only test that we have currently running on AMO. Is that, Jorge, does that sound right?
Yeah, that's right.
Okay. Okay, so yeah, if you hear anything out in the community, any feedback, good or bad, we would love to hear it. So if you want to send it over to me or add it to a discourse thread, we have a discourse thread that a community member started a couple of days ago under the AMO category and the add-on section of discourse. Feel free to throw it there and we'll make sure that folks see it and take a look. Cool. I also wanted to give an update about abuse reporting. So abuse reporting was recently, excuse me, we recently launched an abuse reporting mechanism in the add-ons manager of Firefox. So folks could report abuse directly through Firefox as opposed to having to go back to AMO and report abuse. So that's been live for a couple of weeks now, and Jorge's done some interesting work in analyzing the feedback. And what we've learned is one of the most common complaints that people have, and one of the reasons why they're reporting abuse is because they can't seem to figure out how to uninstall an extension. We think that this might be related to these extensions being sideloaded. So that means, and wasn't aware of this before, I thought it meant something else. Sideloaded extensions are extensions that are packaged usually with some other application. So the other application will install the extension on your computer, and it's hard to, or impossible to remove via the add-ons manager itself. So we're trying to make it a little bit easier for folks to find the documentation on how they can uninstall those sideloaded extensions. The documentation is a little buried on our sumo pages on support.mozilla.org. So we're trying to surface that a little bit higher. And I think that we're also contemplating some changes to sideloading add-ons coming down the line. Just because that seems to be like a pretty bad user pet peeve, and people not being able to uninstall extensions that they don't want anymore is not great for the user. Actually, I kind of want to turn it back to Jorge now. That was a really interesting piece of data that surfaced from the analyzation of the abuse reports. Jorge, could you share a little bit else about like what you learned from analyzing those reports?
So we've only started looking at it. It's a ton of data. So we used to have this on AMO only, and now we moved it to Firefox. By moving it to Firefox, the abuse report data that we're getting is like 100 times that what we got before. So it's no longer feasible to just go over abuse reports and see what they're saying. I used to do that for the AMO ones, but now it's impossible. And we anticipated that, and there are some tools that are being built to make it easier to go through that. But we're also kind of short-staffed at the moment in that area, so we aren't looking very actively at that. So we're only looking at the data in aggregate. The sideloading thing was definitely the bigger thing that we found. We found a couple of bugs related to the way that Firefox stores the way an add-on was installed. There are some bugs that resets that data if something happens in the add-ons database. So those are being fixed so that we have more reliable data on how add-ons are installed. And Andrew, our former intern, he did a bit of analysis on the data. And first he looked at search hijackers, and he found a couple of things there. It turned out that the ones that he flagged were also being flagged separately by someone from our data team. So it just like it was like pretty much the same set of add-ons, but I guess it helped confirm that it was a good approach to look into that kind of stuff. And then he also looked at the text of a random sample of abuse reports to figure out if that was useful, and kind of like the sentiment from users. Yeah, I think like there are a few conclusions there. I'm trying to remember anything useful, but one of the things is that people write a lot of random stuff on those abuse reports. We already knew that from the AMO ones, where there's a ton of noise, and that extended to the ones in Firefox. So getting like actual actionable data from the abuse report text can be a challenge. But looking at them in the aggregate, I think it's possible to be able to mine more useful information, and that's something that we'll try to get to in the future. But at the moment, as I said, we don't really have the capacity to dig deeper into it. We are going to talk about it to the larger product org next week. So there might be some ideas there. There was also a presentation recently about how we're measuring user sentiment based on like Sumo data and Twitter data. And I think like there's something we can do there to collaborate and try to get better signals about how what add-on users are experiencing. So that might be another avenue that to explore.
Nice. One of the things that Andrew reported that I thought was really interesting was that when users think that an extension is malicious, they tend to blame the extension and not necessarily Mozilla, which had been an ongoing concern on Mozilla's end for the last couple of, well, for probably about the last 18 months was when we first started getting asked if having abusive extensions was damaging the Mozilla brand. So this, based on the random sample that we looked at through Andrew's report, it appears that the answer is Mozilla's brand isn't being substantially damaged by malicious extensions. So that was a good piece of news for us. Right. Any other questions or thoughts about abuse reports?
I got a question. In the review page, the abuse reports, you got a tab called Install Origin. Can we assume when it's the value there is none, it's not a link to Mozilla, to AMO website? When the value is none, can we assume that this abuse report is regarding an installation from inline install?
No. So actually, that was a problem that we had with the install origin that we need to fix. So basically, like I think like 1/3 of abuse reports we're getting now say none in the install origin, and that's a bug. And there are a couple of bugs involved there. One is that we reset the install origin in certain circumstances in the Firefox profile. And the other is that the logic that was being used to send the origin was also kind of flawed. So in many cases, it was sending none when it shouldn't. And the problem is that because of the first bug, there are tons of profiles that have none in the install origin for tons of add-ons. So even after we fix it, it's going to be a while before the data kind of normalizes. So none basically gives you no information about the install origin. Like you can't make any assumptions. Sorry.
All right, thanks.
And it will be updated once the user installs an update for that add-on. Will it then be corrected after the bug has been fixed?
I think it would only fix it for new installs.
Okay.
Very good. Okay, any other questions about abuse reporting? Great. The last thing I wanted to share was that we have registered an intent to ship extension workshop for October 1st. So we're working through the last of our pre-flight checklist. One of the things that we're going to be doing soon is setting up the redirects from MDN to extension workshop to make sure that people who land on MDN get directed to where the content is going to be living. We're anticipating that there's going to be a period of time where we're in a soft launch. So the website will be live in order for the redirects to be set up and tested. And during that time, what I'd like is to open it up to members of the community to test the site and see how it goes. In particular, we have some concerns about search on the website. Substring search is currently not supported, and we're not entirely sure how problematic that is. We know that search on MDN itself is not a great experience, and that a lot of people will use another search provider like Google or DuckDuckGo to search for, to query content that they want to find on MDN, and then rely on that outside search provider to connect them with the relevant information. So we have a couple of options for fixing search, but that's one of the areas that we're a little concerned about when we release Extension Workshop into the wild. So if possible, if you could test that out and let us know how that goes or what your experience with search is, that would be great. Any other thoughts or feedback that you have about the site would be very welcome during this time as well. So my thought is that this is going to be released to a relatively small number of community members. We might post something on Discourse inviting people to give the site a go and to take a look at it. And then after October 1st, we'll be looking at doing a more formal promotion with outbound links, like more prominent outbound links from the developer hub on AMO over to Extension Workshop, tweeting about it, blogging about it, etc. So we've got a couple of busy weeks ahead of us there. I have to give a huge tip of the hat to Shivam, who has been really amazing at helping the community come in and get the site ready for launch. I don't think we would be in this position where we would be able to file an intent to ship on October 1st if it hadn't been for Shivam's help and the help of a number of community members who have really stepped in. So I just wanted to publicly say thank you. It's been really great, and we'll celebrate a little bit harder once this thing is actually out the door. Any questions about Extension Workshop? Awesome. You can test it out. The dev server is open to folks, so if you want to poke around, that's awesome. We still have a couple of bugs that need to be checked in. We're looking at a code freeze on September 25th, so my goal is that pretty much all of the critical things that need to be fixed are going to be fixed in the next 2 weeks. And then hopefully next month we'll have some more exciting announcements, and then we can release it into the wild.
It always seems funny to me when people say they need to check in some bugs. I'd rather we checked in some fixes rather than some bugs.
Checked in some bugs. Okay. That is a good note, BJ. I will try to update my vocabulary when talking about this in the future. Yes, check in some fixes. Check in some code.
The problem is that Bugzilla calls things bugs instead of items, because some are fixes, some are extensions, and some are real bugs. And
No, true story. True story. Some of them are enhancements. Some of them are actually bugs. Yeah, I struggle with that too. All right, very good. Well, it is almost time. Are there any other questions or anything anyone would like to share?
The review website is much faster now that the backlog is mostly gone. It was really frustrating for a while when we had 5,000 entries in it. So it's very nice to have the people working on it and clearing that down.
Yay. Well, thank you for hanging in there with that. And big thanks to Liliana for helping burn that down too. That was really great. So yeah, very much appreciated. Okay, awesome. I'll just close with a really quick call out. I know that Santosh, one of our community members, is going to be speaking at JS Fest in Ukraine on November 8th and 9th. If you're around Ukraine and you're interested in, definitely go and support him as he talks about cross-browser extension development. And I'm not sure about GDG DevFest. Do we have someone speak? Oh yeah, look at that. We've got Vijwa, one of our community members, who's also going to be speaking about cross-browser extensions at DevFest. So that's really awesome that we've got some tech speakers out there talking about cross-browser extension development. Check it out. All right, folks, that's going to wrap it up for the day. Everybody, thank you again for joining us. It was really great seeing your faces. Have a great rest of your day and a great rest of your week, and we'll catch you on the flip side.
Great. Thank you. Bye.
Bye.